Hi, this is Rick Ferguson, Artistic Director of the Musical Offering at musicaloffering.org and rickfergusonmusic.com. This is the second interview that we're having with Musical Offering faculty member and composer Jack Langdon. And Jack, you're involved in this really interesting collaborative opera creation that you're working with in New York, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And so now, how many months are you into the project?
Well, I believe the last time we had one of these was a little bit after I just found out, which is October. And I've, of course, had to take a few months off for other things, other projects and whatnot.
Yes.
But I would say in terms of the standard timeline of writing this, I'm about a month in. Yeah. I have another month to go about. And
so you're feeling sort of half-ish way through, kind of, sort of?
Yeah, although for me, I think the progress curve definitely has a bit of a exponential as I get closer.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I'm still kind of in the planting the seed stage. I have a few ideas, I would say. Concept is pretty well outlined, but in terms of writing, you know, it'll happen a lot more in the, I would say, final 3 weeks.
So nitty-gritty work.
Nitty-gritty work. Right now it's planning. Right now it's, you know, outlining certain things, logistics, all that type of stuff.
So remind us once again of sort of the general concept of the opera.
Yeah. So the opera is called Here For, the number 4, A Poetics of Art Labor. And the idea is that being in the, you know, certainly the American social and economic climate that we live in right now, artists oftentimes have to struggle to find remuneration for their work, or even just need to sort of create their own institutions to find adequate valuation for it. Not just in an economic sense, but even just in a cultural sense.
And here we are at the Musical Offering.
Yeah.
Which is sort of an iteration of that concept, right?
Right.
Like,
the idea is that to have a like strong sense of cultural belonging and cultural value, you have to do it in a community. Yeah. It's you know, especially as a composer, we're so tied to this romantic myth of the isolated genius who just has the gift of aesthetic genius bestowed upon them.
And it just drops down from the sky, right?
Yeah. And some people get it and some people don't, and there's no sense about it, but that's never been the case.
That's actually not true.
That's never been the case, actually. You know, even when you look back at Beethoven, who was sort of like the figurehead of this myth, you know,
really created that myth, right? I mean, he was sort of like the primordial figure.
He definitely
in terms of
was.
That, right?
He definitely was. But even in a broader context, you can also think of his thought as being, you know, it's almost entirely indebted to the cultural, you know, environment of Europe at the time, the philosophical environment, and also somebody who just knew the pedagogy and had to ostensibly learn from somebody how to play piano, how to write music, and these are not things that happen mystically in isolation. There's something that actually does happen through the process of learning, and that relies on community. So fast forward a couple hundred years, I'm sort of in the position where, you know, I'm very interested in this idea that oftentimes music, its way that we produce it, is intentionally mystified. Like my whole process of sitting down and composing a piece of work is something that is oftentimes very opaque to the audience. It's not something that they understand or are supposed to understand. But because I think that there is a certain value in the collaborative effort that comes out in these types of contexts, that being able to really be transparent and show how this whole thing was produced as sort of the main focal point of it, especially within the context of all the performers being emerging, you know, in that constant cycle of, you know, we've not, you know, hit a very strong professional place in our careers yet, and we have to rely on non-traditional sources of income or from a day job, and basically just say that, you know, despite all of this, and despite the fact that I am maybe not necessarily like a Guggenheim winning composer,
still the importance of that creative community,
well, and not just
is huge, right?
Exactly, and not just within my own work, but abroad, and,
Yes.
and in all people, and making sure that it's very affirmatively stated that, you know, making artwork and being an art worker in the 21st century in America and, you know, elsewhere is something that is good in its own right. And although that there are, you know, problems with the field, there are things that we can do that are very tangible to work towards a better future.
Yes. Yes. And we all help each other and sort of try to raise all of the boats simultaneously.
Exactly.
Right.
There's so much competition, you know, and it's oftentimes not conducive to actual, you know, artistic greatness.
Yeah.
It gets in the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in terms of your role, in addition to being, you know, the composer with this, you've also found yourself taking on like additional responsibility, right?
Right.
What is that responsibility?
Well, I have taken the choice to, of course, write things that are composed by me, improvise, which is, you know, in my mind, it's live composing. I've also opened up this opera to other people's artistic creations too. The first day, in fact, is, while it has performance elements, it's more of an art installation than anything. So all of the performers, it's me and 3 other longtime friends of mine, will all be creating a variety of work that'll be presented in this space where the audience can freely roam around and sort of take in this entire artwork, but realizing that even from the beginning, it's made up of individual constituent parts.
Yes.
And then on top of that, I also perform in every single stage of the opera too. You know, I very much try not to separate my performance from my composing, and anything that I can do, I would say to, you know, not bring myself into a more narrow, oftentimes self-objectified, overly simplistic view of who I am as an artist.
Yes.
And oftentimes that just means that, you know, not just I in this case, but the entire ensemble that I'm working with has to take on more than one responsibility and support each other.
Yeah,
and whatnot.
that's wonderful. And you know, that does remind me actually of musicians during, you know, like Mozart and Beethoven's time. I mean, the only way that you really got your music to be known was to be out there and performing it yourself. And so, you know, that these lines that we've created that I think are artificial between you're either a composer or you are a performer or you're a musical thinker or writer or whatever, you know, and we tried to pigeonhole these things and put them into boxes. That's actually not true.
Yeah, absolutely not. And it doesn't serve, at least in my opinion, it doesn't serve our, as in the artist's interest. I don't think it serves the audience's interest either, because it's a very limiting way to you know, present music.
It is.
But it does serve sort of the convenience of, you know, somebody gets performed by the New York Phil. That is a very impressive thing to have done, of course. But there's also this, you know, side of it where it's a very exclusive way of valuing something. And, you know, I'm just going to generalize here, but there are pieces by composers that have not been performed by large, important American cultural institutions that are nonetheless works of genius, but, you know, due to class discrimination, race discrimination, all of these other things.
So all of these elements that are playing out in a broader sense in our society, they also have a direct influence. They manifest themselves in the artistic world too.
They do. They do. Yeah. And it's something, you know, something that a lot of people have to contend with outside of their choice. You know, I've been lucky enough to have a few orchestral performances in my life. I've also done a lot of very rigorous freelance independent work, and a lot of collective work. I've been in scratch orchestras, I've been an improviser for a long time.
Right.
And at the end of the day, the experiences that I value the most are not the ones that oftentimes give me the most acclaim.
Sure, yes, yes. Remind me, when's the performance run for the opera?
The performance will be between April 4th and April 10th in New York City. There's a very, very great new music ensemble, Ensemble Mise En, and they have a residency program that is hosting me and my friends for this performance. And I have free reign over a gallery in Bushwick, Brooklyn.
How exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we'll be sure actually to put this information to make that available on our Facebook page, right? So you can simply visit the Musical Offerings Facebook page. You should like it anyway, but especially for this, we'll make sure that that information is available, right? Because I'm sure that we have like New York and East Coast peeps, and a lot of them are going to want to come to these kinds of things because they're interesting, they're exciting, and it's new stuff, right? And it sounds to me like there's going to be a lot of stuff created, like there, right?
Absolutely.
So how much fun is that? So I think probably we'll try to check in maybe one more time before performance time, and just sort of see how things are ramping up, and see if Jack has lost any hair between now and performance time.
Losing it every day, Rick.
I know. So thank you so much for watching, and make sure that you follow our Facebook page.